and thank you for joining us on the news on NTAi International. I'm Naja'atu Tijani, and with me is Shegun Ajayi. But first, the headlines. President MUHAMMADU Buhari directs Minister of Health to ensure effective utilization of $890 million global fund in the next 3 years. Nigeria Governors Forum commits to sustaining safe and effective vaccination of Nigerians against coronavirus. Correspondent takes a look at history and political evolution of the African Great Lakes nation as President Magufuli passes on. And now the news in detail. Reactions have begun to trail the death of Tanzania's president John Pombe Magufuli, who passed on this Wednesday at the age of 60. His death was confirmed in a televised address by his vice, Samia Suluhu Hassan, after weeks of speculation. Adebola Brooksland Sunday reports.
Few weeks ago, speculations on the whereabouts of the late President John Magufuli dominated discussions across Tanzania, with the suspicion that he had been hospitalized for COVID-19. The speculation had led to several arrests as the government sought to contain the rumors.
Nchi kwa masikitiko makubwa nawajulisha kuwa leo.
In a televised address Thursday night, Vice President Samia Suluhu Hassan said her superior, Magufuli, had died of heart complications, adding that Magufuli was hospitalized on March 6 at Jakaya Kikwete Cardiac Institute.
Kwa masikitiko makubwa.
Observers say Magufuli is one of Africa's most prominent COVID-19 skeptics. Samia Suluhu Hassan is expected to be sworn in to succeed Magufuli and complete his second 5-year term, which he had just started after winning election late last year. She will be the Tanzania's first female head of state. In the meantime, some African leaders have sent condolence messages to government and people of Tanzania over the death of President Magufuli.
On the continental stage, the late President Magufuli was a champion of Pan-Africanism.
Adebola Brooksland Sunday, NTA News.
Meanwhile, President MUHAMMADU Buhari joins the government and people of the Republic of Tanzania in mourning the passing of President John Pombe Magufuli, whose legacy of patriotism and dedication to the African cause will continue to resonate across the continent. In a statement signed by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, President Buhari believes the late Tanzanian president's courage and love for his country inspired various reforms which generations will continue to celebrate, including the challenging decision to reduce size and cost of governance, the insistence on a people-focused budget with clear priorities in education and health, and consistently fighting profligacy and frivolity in public expenditure. President Buhari affirms that the former Tanzanian leader spent most of his life serving the country and humanity, with a rich pedigree of working as a school teacher and rising steadily in public service as a member of parliament, deputy minister of works, minister of lands and human settlement, and minister of livestock and fisheries. Meanwhile, Adebola Brooksland Sunday has more on the history and political evolution of the African Great Lakes nation.
Tanzania, also known as the African Great Lakes nation, was formally formed in 1964 out of the union of the larger mainland territory of Tanganyika and the coastal archipelago of Zanzibar. In 1947, Tanganyika became United Nations Trust territory under British administration, a status it's kept until its independence in 1961. From independence in 1961 until the mid-1980s, Tanzania was one-party state with a socialist model of economic development. It was in the mid-1980s under the administration of President Ali Hassan Mwinyi that Tanzania undertook a number of political and economic reforms. In January and February 1992, the government decided to adopt multi-party democracy, while legal and constitutional changes led to the registration of 11 political parties. Fast forward to year 2015. As a first-time presidential candidate, Magufuli was the unexpected choice of the Revolutionary Party, which had controlled Tanzanian politics for decades. In 2020, President John Magufuli officially won a second term with a landslide victory of more than 84% of the votes, according to the official counts. Described as the bulldozer president, pragmatic leader, champion of Pan-Africanism, champion of regional cooperation during his lifetime, Magufuli clamped down on what he saw as extravagant spending, cancelling Independence Day celebrations, and ordered a public clean-up. Adebola, Brooklyn Sunday, NTAi News.
Thank you, Adebola. Now joining us in the studio to speak further on the life and times of the late president of Tanzania is a lecturer from Bayes University in Abuja, Dr. Adoye Omale. Sir, you're welcome to the NTAi International Studios.
Yeah, good evening. I'm pleased to be here.
What would you say the leadership style of President Magufuli was, and what was his political philosophy?
Well, President John Magufuli is just unfortunate that we have to lose him at this particular point in time. He's one of Africa's finest leaders, especially in a period when Africa is grappling with leadership challenges. As you can see, he is a Pan-Africanist from the way he rigidly campaigned against COVID-19 and the way he tried as much as possible to ensure that Tanzania was not influenced by outside parties. In fact, his foreign policy was mainly determined by, he was focused on domestic issues. He didn't do much in terms of foreign relations. Just like his predecessor, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, and other leaders before him, he ensured that making Africa his focus of attention was his priority. And he ensured that Western influences were curtailed, especially within the East African area. So to that extent, we can say that his ideology was Pan-Africanist in nature. Outside that, he has also been severely criticized for hounding opposition figures. And so people have criticized him. Others have liked the way he has carried on with Tanzania. His anti-corruption policies have been hailed, especially wasteful public spending. So in terms of on the domestic front, he has tried a lot for the people of Tanzania.
So talking about criticisms now, what would you say about his recent statements on the issue of COVID-19, his stance on COVID-19?
I think his stand on COVID-19 is one of the major things he will be remembered for. Saying that people should go and pray, that his citizens should go and pray in the churches and mosques, and that the devil, COVID-19 is a devil that cannot enter the body of Christ. Quoting him, that's what he said. And to a lot of people, it was very unprecedented for him to have made those statements because COVID-19 was real. However, his reasons for saying that, I don't know where he got those beliefs from. But as a president, he held on to those beliefs, and he never allowed Tanzania was not even giving figures, just like other nations were doing. Tanzanians were not being tested. And though we have not had cases of mass death or mass contraction of the disease. In fact, it was rumored on 27th of February, when he was last seen publicly, that he has contracted the disease, though the vice president said that the cause of his death was heart failure or heart-related ailment. So one might not know the actual reason or cause of death, but since the official pronouncement that it's not COVID-19, I think we take the official news from the vice president.
Okay, now speaking of the Vice President, Samia Hassan, she's expected to be sworn in as the first female president in Tanzania. How do you see this impacting the country's political circle?
Well, I think the framers of their constitution might have done that so that there will be no vacuum in leadership. I think she is to continue with whatever policies that the MAGUFULI regime has put on ground. I think virtually in most democracies, the position of vice president is to fill the gap when the president is not there. So I think it's to ensure that there's continuity because he has 4 years to go. He's just barely 1 year into his second tenure of 5 years. So the vice president will step in, and it's very instructive. She's likely to be outside Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. She's also likely to be one of the first female, among the first female presidents that have ruled an African country. So that is instructive. Again, it's very important that John Magufuli have joined the league of presidents who have died on the seat. People like John Atta Mills of Ghana, our own President Umaru Yar'Adua, Omar Bongo of Gabon, and so on and so forth. So it's really a tragic time for Africa.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us, Dr. Amale.
Thank you very much.
And that was Dr. Amale Adoyi from Bayes University sharing insights on happenings in Tanzania. President MUHAMMADU BUHARI this Thursday has directed the Minister of Health to ensure effective utilization of Global Fund's generous provision of $890 million over the next 3 years to support Nigeria's fight against HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. President Buhari issued the directive at the virtual launch of the $890 million grant for the period of 2021 to 2023, which will also support the establishment of resilient and sustainable systems for health in the country. In a statement by the special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, the President, who assured donor agencies and development partners of judicious use of the grant, says the funding would complement investment in the health sector, help curb new infections, and reduce HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria-related morbidity and mortality. The President also applauded the Global Fund for contributing the sum of $51 million during the early stages of Nigeria's response to COVID-19 to procure personal protective equipment, test kits, and to scale up diagnostic capacity. The President recounted that the strong partnership between the government and people of Nigeria and Global Fund dates back to 2002 and has contributed immensely to saving lives, especially of women and children. According to him, over the last 2 decades, joint efforts with Global Fund, the United States government, the United Nations, and other development partners have succeeded in bringing about significant reduction in new infections, morbidity, and mortality from HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. On Nigeria's contribution to the fund, the President announced that he approved $12 million to the last Global Fund replenishment held in Lyon, France, representing 20% increase on the country's immediate previous contribution. Now, the only way to effectively address the massive infrastructural deficit which the country faces is by public-private partnership arrangement. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo stated this at the opening of a two-day retreat of the National Council on Privatization. The retreat will, among other things, deliberate the proposed amendment of the Public Enterprises Act 1999. Citing statistics from Nigerian Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan and the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan 2017 to 2020 to buttress his point, the Vice President noted that Nigeria will require at least $2.3 trillion over the next 30 years to bridge this gap. The review of budgetary allocation for capital expenditure, even over the past decade, will show that government resources are completely insufficient for this purpose. While urging participants drawn from the private and public sectors at the retreat to remain focused on the objectives of the meeting, the Vice President emphasized that developing a framework which will be attractive to investors should be topmost in their deliberations. And still on the economy, Jigawa State is repositioning to become the next investment destination in Nigeria. The state is doing so through the creation of an investment-friendly environment and selling all this to the world through an investors' roundtable held in Abuja. Benny Adams reports.
Jigawa currently ranks second in the World Bank's ease of doing business, with comparative advantage in agriculture, renewable energy, and solid minerals, complemented by good road network, an international airport, an export processing zone, boosted by an international border with Niger Republic, which opens up opportunities for the AFCFTA market. The icing on the cake is the peaceful space Jigawa enjoys, in spite of being bordered by insurgency of the northeast and banditry in the northwest.
We have realized about 57 investment, and with a potential of over 60,000 jobs. And out of these 57, about 17 are now actualized, fully operational in Jigawa State. And there was about $1.2 million.
Now the state is wooing potential investors to come and feel the investment climate.
The largest producer of hibiscus, largest of dates. And you know what you can do with dates? You can even make honey with dates. Second largest producer of sesame. Seventh largest crop producer in Nigeria, one of the top 5 largest rice producing states. Gum Arabic, we're one of the top 3.
I've worked in many other states, and in no state have I ever seen this level of ease.
The Investors Roundtable hopes to get investors to bring in the required technology to harness the potential. Benny Adams, NTAi News.
This is the news on NTAi International. Do stay tuned for more reports after this break.
I am there now. Are you sure this will work? Has to. Can't miss these guys get choke. Just keep your phone on so I can listen.
Today we're going to be discussing sleep disorder. What is the medical term for sleepwalking?
Sonambulism.
Correct.
Get free Intel to Intel calls and experience HD quality conversations every time. Intel. Live more.
Thanks for staying with NTAi International, and we're still talking COVID-19 and economic growth. The Nigeria Governors Forum says it is committed to sustaining efforts towards safe and effective vaccination of Nigerians against the coronavirus, as well as exploring windows for speedy economic recovery and growth. Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports.
NGF says the perceptions shared by some Nigerians on the efficacy and safety of AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is in sharp contrast with its clinical test certified by the World Health Organization and pledged to sustain commitment to the vaccination of Nigerians. The forum commends state governors for the smooth administration of vaccine at subnational levels and received endorsement from COVID-19 Technical Advisory Group led by Professor Oyewale Tomori. NGF lauds the Nigerian Governors' Wives Forum's effort in tackling issues of gender-based violence and other forms of crimes against minors and pledged sustained commitment in winning the war. The Nigerian Governors Forum commended a renewed vigor to combat drug trafficking and abuse and pledged support to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to contain the menace. On the economy of the nation, the forum engaged British Deputy High Commissioner on bilateral discussion in the area of increasing capacity response to COVID-19 economic support as well as customs revenue growth rates. The forum receives update from Presidential Economic Advisory Council on accelerated economic growth and upliftment of 100 people out of poverty by the year 2030, as well as NNPC audited account for the year 2018. 28 states have achieved disbursement-linked indicator for states' fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability, while the forum's chairman and governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, briefed governors on his engagement with Committee of Vice Chancellors of State Universities. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTAi News.
And on the global scene, Italy mourns its coronavirus victims as third wave looms, and the United Nations agrees to Ethiopia's request for a joint probe of abuse in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Joyce Omitu has details.
The European Union's Drug Regulatory Agency says experts have concluded that the AstraZeneca vaccine is not linked to an overall increase in the risk of blood clots and that the benefits of use outweigh the risks. The findings from the European Medicines Agency could open the way for European countries that had suspended the use of the vaccine over the past week to resume dispensing the shots. In the UK, the medicines regulator said there have been 5 cases of a rare type of blood clot in the brain among AstraZeneca vaccine recipients. However, they added that evidence does not suggest that the jab causes blood clots. Meanwhile, a batch of fake doses of the Russian Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine have been discovered and seized by authorities in Mexico. In a statement, the Russian Direct Investment Fund responsible for exports of the vaccine said analysis of the photographs of the seized batch, including the design of containers and labels, suggests that it is a fake substance which has nothing to do with the original vaccine. From Italy, the country has declared the 18th of March as the National Day in memory of the victims of COVID-19 after a bill was approved unanimously by the Italian Senate Wednesday. Flags flew at half-mast across the country and thousands held a minute's silence to preserve and renew the memory of all the more than 100,000 people who died in 13 months because of the pandemic. The world has recorded more than 2.6 million COVID-19 fatalities, and Nigeria accounts for 2,027 of that number. Moving on, the United Nations says its Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, has agreed to Ethiopia's request for a joint investigation into the situation in the northern region of Tigray. The UN will work with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission to investigate reports of the killings of civilians and widespread sexual abuse. And that's where we end this segment. I am Joyce Omitu.
Thank you, Joyce. The House of Representatives has commenced a legislative process to enact a law on cyberspace intelligence to effectively combat security challenges in the country. The Chairman, House Committee on Defense, Babajimi Benson, disclosed this during an oversight visit to the Defense Headquarters in Abuja.
This visit is the first official engagement between the House Committee on Defense and the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo. The committee reiterated that in supporting the federal government to end all forms of security breach, the House initiated several legislative interventions to improve logistics and enhance performance, latest of which is the proposed bill on cyberspace intelligence.
The importance of space and cyberspace to the modern warfare cannot also be underestimated. The space and cyberspace has become a very critical sphere economically and militarily. Therefore, maintaining their capability is now an emerging necessity for military operations globally.
The defense chief says fostering a professional, result-oriented and effective armed forces that is loyal to the provisions of the Constitution is paramount.
There will be a collective good for not just the legislature, but of course the entire Nigerians that you represent.
The oversight enabled the committee obtain information on the capital projects of defense headquarters for 2019 and 2020. In another development, the House Committee on Federal Road Safety Corps has handed over fire trucks to the Borno State Command of the Corps, donated by the state government. Lami Ali, NTAi News.
Establishing a permanent institutionalized dialogue between the public and private sector at all levels will help in the promotion of technical and vocational education and the training of youths in Nigeria. This was the key point at a breakfast meeting between German corporation and media executives in Nigeria. Hamman Jabani reports.
Youth Development for Youth Employment is a project instituted to achieve German government's objectives in the fields of international cooperation for sustainable development, promote international education, work, and human capacity development. It is working on 1,500 projects in about 120 countries. In Nigeria, it is working in 15 states under 7 projects, including the skills development for youth employment, and it has trained about 6,500 youths in construction, agriculture, ICT, fashion, and hospitality, and the media, whose Gs believe are viable partners. The meeting, therefore, is to fashion out ways of achieving the set targets.
The idea is also to introduce, for example, job centers in different states, to also provide information with regard to technical training, but also to the possibilities of different trades to be trained in.
For the media, what can they put on the table?
As a journalist, as a media outfit where I belong, we better encourage and promote skills rather than a paper qualification.
NTAi will continue to partner with non-governmental organizations and government organizations, as well as technical institutions, in promoting this aspect of human life and also encouraging youth to key in to technical education.
It is believed that with the support of the media, the over 43% of the potential working population in Nigeria that are unemployed or underemployed will soon be reached for training and gainful employment. Hamman Jabani, NTAi News.
It's time to take a look at the weather prospects for Friday. And the weather forecast concludes the news on NTAi International. Do remember to connect with NTAi and stand against rape and rapists. I'm Naja'atu Tijani, and with me, Shegun Ajayi.